Let's get straight to our legal analyst at CBSN, Vinoo Varghese, to give us an update on what he knows about this. So, Vinoo, what are you discerning from the reason, the rationale, why these charges would have been dropped against Jussie Smollett?
Well, I think the first thing is that you got to wonder what's going on in Chicago with this office, because he went from reporting a hate crime to then dismissing the hate crime to now. I mean, it's crazy within such a short period of time for him to be charged and then to be released. I think it speaks really badly of the office. And, the reasons, as of now, the prosecution hasn't said why they're doing it. But, it has to be that there's not enough evidence to go forward. But you think they would have done that before, they would have figured that out before charging him in the first place.
So reports are that the police chief of Chicago is furious because he was given no advance warning that this was going to be done. Obviously, everybody wants to talk to the Cook County prosecutors. They're not really responding as of yet to calls from either the media or from others. But the idea that Smollett's record would be wiped clean, which is a statement from his lawyers. I mean, I think a lot of people are just sort of scratching their heads and trying to figure out why something like this would have happened and why bring those charges in the first place if there was no evidence.
I couldn't agree more, because, I mean, this became a media spectacle. The state's attorney, Davis, they had this big press conference. The chief had this press conference where he criticized him, Smollett, as because he was African American, saying that how could he do this, and he has set back, race relations, and then to have, this has happened so fast that you really have to ask yourself what is going on in that office. And then obviously they're prosecuting R. Kelly also in that same office, and you got to wonder about the health of that prosecution as well.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of boggles the mind. I mean, in the statement to the media and to the public, Jussie Smollett's lawyers say this entire situation is a reminder that there should never be an attempt to prove a case in the court of public opinion. But this wasn't trying to be proved in a court of public opinion. It was going to be proved in a court of law. He'd been charged with some 16 counts of felony counts of filing a false police report. He was facing 48 years, up to 48 years behind bars. If they were going to bring those number of charges, those felony counts against Jussie Smollett, would you not, if you're a prosecutor, you are a former prosecutor, Vinoo, what would it take for you to bring those charges?
On a case like this with a public figure such as Smollett, I mean, you've got to have all your T's crossed, all your I's dotted before you bring a case like this. And the fact that it's such a dramatic turnaround, you went from this huge press conference criticizing this man and having him surrender, having his reputation completely destroyed, to now dropping the case in a matter of 2 months, in less than 2 months. It's embarrassing. And you've got to wonder, again, what are they doing over there? Because, you'd never bring a case like this against such a public figure unless you have everything ready to go, meaning like you better be 100% sure you've locked all your witnesses into the correct testimony. You've gotten all the forensic evidence you need to go, because there's no rush, right? So if initially they dropped they investigated those two Nigerian people, and there were all the jokes going on about how Jussie Smollett was the first American to swindle a couple of Nigerians. I mean, they're actually. I mean, I think they're of Nigerian descent, but they're Americans. They were born here in the United States. I know, but I'm just speaking about all the memes that you saw on the internet with this case. It really was a big deal when they went from looking at these two guys to then looking at Jussie Smollett, and then to actually have him arrested. And now, in less than 2 months dismissing this case, I mean, it just shows you that they're not running a tight ship over there. And I think this should, if anybody should be smiling right now, it should be R. Kelly.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing I don't understand, I think a lot of people are going to be scratching their heads to understand, is the judge is sealing the case, and the actor is agreeing to pay $10,000 in bond forfeiture, which, again, for all the work that the police in Chicago did to try and figure out what exactly happened on that night back in January 29th at 2 o'clock in the morning or so in downtown Chicago, it doesn't seem like a large amount of money to pay even the city back for the expenses of the police investigation.
I mean, at this point, if they're dropping charges, Jussie Smollett should not be paying anything. So I'm not even fully understanding that, and obviously more details.
So that doesn't even make that, even that is sort of unclear as to why that's happening, right? So you're saying essentially if he's innocent and they're dropping charges, or at least they can't prove anything against him, why is he even agreeing to pay anything?
100%. I mean, he should be. I mean, at this point, here's the interesting thing: he's going to be looking at a major. He's going to have, if he's got the right personal injury attorney, he's going to be having a field day suing this office.
You think that he could turn around and sue the police, the prosecutors, or?
I would think so. I mean, I would. I imagine that they would not want to have this case go to court.
Well,
so he's going to have a massive, settlement against the Chicago State's Attorney's Office.
Yeah, I mean, the lawyers in a statement said that he's relieved, Jussie is relieved to have this situation behind him, and is very much looking forward to getting back to focusing on his family, friends, and career. If he chose not to sue, what would be next? He would just go on living his life.
Yeah, I mean, look, he has the right. I mean, again, at this point, he should be, keeping all options open. And I imagine, yeah, he wants to move on. But if they've now determined the office that, which they have, that it doesn't warrant charges, he's going to have a nice payday. I imagine he spent a fortune in a very short amount of time on his legal bills. So he's probably going to want to recoup some of that.
You mentioned the two brothers, the Osundario brothers. They were working with prosecutors. They were talking to them. They had spoken to the police about what exactly happened on the night of January 29th, what their involvement in whatever the incident was. Do you think that there's a possibility that they may have stopped talking? I mean, I don't know. What happens if you stop talking to the DAs, or can you rescind your testimony, your charges?
You can, but now you've opened yourself up to prosecution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's basically you're looking at, basically an obstruction type charge, maybe even a contempt type charge, because, if they've given sworn testimony and now have they recanted, well, then that's going to be, they're just opening themselves up to further prosecution. But at this point, I'm not sure the State's Attorney's Office in Chicago should be prosecuting anyone. I mean, I've not seen anything like this where you go that quickly from holding a press conference the way that they did to then dropping cases in less than 2 months. I mean, it's stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so. I'm looking here, and again, this is reporting that is coming to through various sources. We still don't have anything from the Cook County prosecutors about why they're dismissing these charges against Jussie Smollett. And again, why they're even asking him to pay $10,000 in bond forfeiture. But there are reports out there that it was due in part to Jussie Smollett's volunteer service in the community. I'm looking at that on various news websites that suggest that he may have been volunteering in the community. I mean, but that wouldn't be enough to get felony charges dropped against you, would it?
I would think that would have been, if he's been working nonstop since that point, putting in 100 hours a week, maybe, but I doubt it. There has to be something else going on. And look, there is one other possibility, potential scenario where something came up in the evidence between him and them, and for whatever reason they're not going to move forward, and it may be that they have other stuff on him and he has stuff on them, and everyone's choosing to just leave and let bygones be bygones. It'll be very interesting to see what happens. It'll be very interesting to see whether he does pursue a civil suit against them. But in any event, no matter what, this is a serious black eye on the Chicago State's Attorney's Office.
So you mentioned earlier, Vinoo, that you mentioned R. Kelly, because this is the same prosecutors that are prosecuting the R. Kelly case. Why did you draw that analogy?
Because that's a very, in my view, that's a very suspicious prosecution. In many ways, more than Jussie Smollett, because that prosecutor, Kim Foxx, went out there and publicly sought complainants to come forward after the documentary was released. So, I commented on not with you, but one of your co-hosts. I was in studio when the night that R. Kelly surrendered himself, and I said to one of your co-hosts that how is it that you have this prosecution that you've sought out, where you go out and you watch a documentary, and then you say please come forward, and anybody and everyone, and then what I said was, if I were his defense attorney, I'd be excited about the prospect of defending him, because you can easily say that this is a manufactured prosecution. Where were all these people, 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when these acts were supposed to have occurred? So, this is, again, as I said, if I'm R. Kelly's lawyer, I'm smiling right now.